If it weren't for the tunnel vision, Braun would have halted. He could tell Olga was hesitant to attack this beast, but considering his previous experiences with these monstrosities, he wasn't about to take any chances. In a blur of movement, he'd grabbed the peck by the scruff of its neck, holding it at arm's length. His head whipped to face the drocked woman behind him.
"Turn around and go! You've got to keep out of this!"
He bellowed, eyes full of a blend of resolve and aggression. To his surprise, Olga flinched but kept her ground. Then, much to Braun's dismay, she proceeded to walk directly towards them. His panic grew, eyes flashing between the bookseller and the peck, and in a sheer moment of panic, he made a rash decision. In a smooth motion, Braun clamped two hands down upon the goblinoid and launched it into the distance with a mighty lob, hurling the thing nearly 15 meters away. Just before bolting after it, he called out behind him,
"Grimm, on Olga!"
In a flash of movement, the familiar, lanky figure seemingly glided to her side. Before she could protest, the unmistakable sound of unsheathed blades resounded through the woods. Grimm signaled to Braun to plow onward, whose eyes began to spark.
Come now. You know nothing about the...
Grimm began. He was quickly silenced with an open palm and a loud smack.
Grimm, I swear to you that I know more than either of you adrenaline-fueled dunderheads. I know for a fact that that particular peck was unusual, vastly different. It had something more than just primal instinct running through it. You didn't see into its eyes. You didn't read its body language. I mean, that thing could...
Yes, it could have feelings. Shouldn't be hurt. That old song and dance.
Damn it, Grimm. This isn't some idiotic sentimentalism. This thing could be worth studying, you dolt. If it could feel true emotions, it could provide insight into everything from inherently magical beasts to evolution. I mean, gods. It could even help us understand the humanoid brain. I mean, if you let that obsessive oaf just take and toss him into the next town over, I mean, he can't be studied if he has bloody brain damage.
Fervently shoving her fellow shopkeep aside, Olga bolted ahead before being abruptly stopped by a tug. A hand holding onto her wrist. The touch was cold, frigid enough to provide freezer burn and oddly heavy. The spectral hands wrapped their translucent gray fingers tightly around Olga's wrist. The more they squeezed, the heavier and colder it felt, before she finally gave in and turned to face Grimm, his face uncharacteristically resilient.
Olga, they resist magic. One guard drop, one glance away, one arid blink, and it could tear you limb from limb before you could even react. If that thing had higher cortical function, it'd be infinitely more dangerous, manipulating you into thinking that it's safe before it catches you unaware.
Tightening his ethereal grip, Grimm continued.
I'm not letting you go anywhere near that. You're not going towards them, and whatever I do to you, and whatever you do to me will never be half as bad as what that gremlin could do to the both of us. This is the better of two evils. You'll thank me later.
Olga stiffened. Her arms twitched, wisps dancing across active fingers as she glared down the scrawny human before her, eyes erupting with sudden, unbridled rage. Flames rippled forth into pillars and her body positioned for an offensive.
No. You'll be lucky if I even apologize later, Grimm. I'm done. Let me teach you why trying to protect me is such a futile gesture.
Braun left no time for the Peck to recover. In a single thunderous leap, he'd covered the 10-odd yards between him and his target, landing a crushing blow to the beast's gut as the trajectory carried him right on top of the goblinoid. The Peck cried out in pain, tears spraying off his face before grabbing his gut and stumbling back a few steps. Braun stepped in close, delivering blow after blow. Each attack was accompanied by a flash of magenta, various locations on his arms growing numb for a fraction of a second, as sporadic mighty bolts leapt to his opponent's body. The Peck tried frantically waving away the energy jolting through its person, but to no avail. In a frenzied panic, its flailing arm caught Braun in the gut, which made him stumble backwards slightly. His heart leapt into his throat as he felt his gut ignite with tension, and his limbs flared to life with abnormal vigor. Dodging around the Peck's arms, he landed a solid blow to the thing's side, which caused it to careen into a nearby tree, splitting bark and wood alike. Bright arcs of energy leapt across Braun's body as he charged the beast, speed exponentially increasing. Barely able to turn around in time, the goblinoid's body flew like a rag doll, once another tremendous impact landed on its chest. It wheezed, unable to catch its breath, before gasping and rolling out of the way just in time to dodge a potentially lethal chop from Braun. As he turned to face his target, however, the Peck was upon him, fist already extended and mere inches from his face. Unable to duck in time, he felt the full force of the blow, catching a glimpse of its form. At this, Braun was taken aback, his mind registering a twinge of respect. This was a tactic some members of his gym used, twisting their fists to land hits more accurately. Having trained with so many who used that technique, Braun could identify the impact in an instant. Very commonplace. It was only now that he stopped treating this less like a hunt and more like a true fight.
Huh, you know a lot more than you let on, Pipsqueak.
He chuckled, wiping a thin line of spittle from the side of his mouth and grinning. But this thing looked simply aghast. Was it really a Peck?
It's gotta be one,
he said to himself.
It's got the trademark height, jaw, short.
Only now did Braun recognize the elongated limbs of this creature. They were far longer than they should have been, far longer than any Peck's limbs that he had witnessed before. His curiosity and testosterone clashed for a few seconds, while the beast before him shuddered and stood in a defensive position. An easily identifiable defensive position. Eyes widening, Braun spotted the shift of weight. The left hand and foot slid in front of the Peck's core, right arm and leg slightly behind it, fist raised defensively in front of his face. This was a common beginner stance, an orthodox stance, but not one that Braun himself used. His mind suddenly reeled, realizing this thing wasn't simply mimicking his attack patterns. It knew how to fight, specifically without relying on instincts or replication. His heart sang, excited jolts of electricity running through his metallic eyebrow and nose piercings. His grin broadened. He began loosening his body as he prepared for the next attack.
I don't know if you can understand me, Peck, but trust me when I say I don't want to kill you anymore. All I want to do is have a good fight, and I want you to show me what you can do!
Dancing around his opponent, footwork causing the Peck's eyes to quite literally cross at times, Braun unleashed a barrage of impacts, hitting his mark every time. Unable to dodge the furious onslaught, the creature simply did its best to roll with the blows, as Braun picked up his pace. Through it all, the Peck stood strong, albeit battered and bruised. Unable to hold back his excitement at being able to rain hell on an opponent who could take it, Braun's spirit manifested further in his power. The sparks leapt from his piercings and around his arm. The hairs on the Peck's limbs visibly stood, and his eyes widened. More energy jolted and arced across Braun's arm, the air around the combatants growing energetic and charged to the point of even Braun feeling a metallic taste in his mouth. The clearing was lit a bright magenta hue as the discharge of this attack fried bark and leaves alike, jolts causing patches of grass to disintegrate into piles of ash and dirt. Arm pulled far back, posture set, and eyes filled with excitement and adrenaline. Braun tensed, ready to launch the devastating blow. Then it spoke.
Stop!
Bellowed the creature, arms shivering while shielding its face.
What? Did you?
Stuttered Braun. Sure, it had a humanoid appearance, but surely Peck couldn't actually speak. Could they? Regardless, Braun stood still, contemplating whether or not he should throw the punch quite yet.
Stop!
Screamed the Peck, louder and with more confidence this time. The thing coughed hard, peppering the grass in front of it with speckles of crimson and saliva. Braun's emotions shifted wildly between confusion, paranoia, and aggression as he inspected this creature in a new light. His eyes darted wildly across its figure, trying to determine if it could be some sort of illusion. But nobody could create an illusion this physical. As he was distracted, Braun's lightning flittered and dullened. And as he tugged himself out of his own head, the beast screeched at him. The sound itself would be enough to give him chills, but what came with the pained call dislodged his confidence from his mind and sent it crashing to the earth. A loud boom preceded a massive burst of energy, the wave causing Braun to stumble. His vision momentarily blurred as he glared down the Peck, whose body acted as the center of the shockwave. After a moment of silence, the beast raised its fist the same way Braun had. Slowly, deliberately. Then, a series of gears erupted behind his arm, following its contours perfectly. The few appearing on the Peck's arm used it as a sort of axle to spin around. But the rest seemingly required no such thing. Each gear spun ever faster, the whirring growing louder and wind getting stronger. Tears flew from the Peck's eyes as the clockwork constructed itself behind him, and in a single, brutal strike, the creature's blow plowed directly into the center of Braun's gut. Upon impact, the cogs worked double time, Braun feeling more and more force applied to the blow. Blood and spittle mixed within his mouth as sweat flew from his brow, and after what felt like an eternity, kinetic energy caught up with him. He was sent spiraling into a nearby boulder, spiderwebbing the stone structure. Just before going unconscious, he looked up to the creature. A scratched-up, abnormally pale Olga was charging towards it. As his body finally failed him, Braun reached out a hand, vainly trying to hold on to consciousness, before it all went dark.